What is the creepiest glitch in the Matrix you've experienced? Redditor 1, I spilled chocolate ice cream on my leg. I wiped it off and there was still a pale brown stain in the shape of the ice cream splotch. I told my mother, who said it was a birthmark. I will swear under oath that never before that moment did I have a birthmark there. Redditor 2, every once in a while I have dreams about places or people I've never seen, then about 6-7 months later I'm in the place or with the people and have deja vu. I also sing random songs even when something else is playing on the radio, then the next song that plays is what I was singing. I've done this on mine, my best friends and my girlfriend's iPods on shuffle many times, and it freaks them the duck out every time. One super weird thing though happened in about 2012-ish. I was 19 and living at home with my parents and younger sister still. I came home from work from my job at a barbecue place and my sister says to me, "Oh, I thought you said you were off today?" I'm confused because I left at 5 a.m. before anyone was awake, and I ask her, when did I say that? She says to me, like 2 hours ago in your room. She thinks I'm screwing with her, so I tell her to smell me cause you can smell the barbecue sauce and smoke on me. Then she gets really creeped out and tells me she had went into my room earlier and seen me in bed with covers up to my neck and had a 15-minute conversation with me. That shit really creeped me out and I never felt comfortable in that room ever again. Redditor 3, was going to be late and was coming up with a story in order to avoid getting in trouble. Story I came up with is that as I was being pulled over by a cop for speeding, someone rear-ended him and hit my vehicle. Had a pretty big dent in my truck, but no one knew what I drove yet as I was new to the job. 5 minutes later I got pulled over for going 75 in a 65 and lo and behold someone clipped the cop car and pushed the car into my truck. Ticket was excused, boss told me it was okay, got that bumper fixed for free and $1,000 from the dude's insurance company. The one who hit the cop car. Redditor 4, I was listening to my friend talk and he suddenly just lagged out, I guess. He sounded like a static phone and then repeated a couple of words. Edit, I didn't think my comment would get this many upvotes. Thanks guys. Kinda weird. Highest upvoted comment is probably about a seizure. Redditor 5, when I was little 6 years old my parents took us to Disneyland in Florida. We went to go watch one of those shows with parrots. During the middle, I had to go to the bathroom, so my mom took me, and left my dad and my sister to watch the show. When we came back, the entire stadium was empty, so we thought the show ended and we went back to the bathroom area to wait for my dad, thinking that's where he must have taken my sister since it's the only bathroom station in the area. We sat on the bench and waited for 2 hours before my mom gave up. This was pre-cell phone. The only remarkable thing during this time was that one of those iguana lizard things was fighting a squirrel behind the bench and I watched that with great joy. I actually remember this. We did some other stuff, then went back to the hotel room to wait for them. The entire time my mom was annoyed at my dad, saying it's so irresponsible of him. A few hours after we got back to the hotel room, my dad and sister, who is a year younger than me, came back and obviously they started arguing, both saying they were waiting for the other at the bathroom. Me and my sister, on the hand, started telling each other about the lizard and squirrel we saw fighting. Apparently, both of us saw what happened from the same vantage point on that bench. My parents stopped to listen to us and asked us to clarify. We both saw the same lizard, same squirrel, fighting from the same point on the bench. It was one of those inexplicable occurrences, but they didn't give it further thought until me and my sister brought up that remember that time we saw the lizard and squirrel fight? And my mom was like, yeah, that was a weird day. Redditor 6, this just happened quite recently. I was heading towards a place from a train station that was being remodeled and there's a huge chunk that's under construction. I got a bit lost in the area and my Google Maps was telling me that I should go through one path, but I couldn't since the whole area was basically off limits and I should take a detour. This was some busy underpass with people going to the platforms and there was one big temporary plywood wall with big signs of under construction, unauthorized access, forbidden, no entry. This part got weird. That plywood wall had a plywood door. And people were entering, exiting it like a normal busy door. Completely normal looking people that look like they don't belong in a construction area, even some old woman entered it. So then I thought that the map is working fine, so I decided to go through the door, and it got even more weirder. On the other side was just a huge empty area, completely under construction. An area of sand, piles of gravel, some pillars and construction in the distance. The edge of the underpass was completely unfinished. I was really confused since I wasn't far behind the last person who went through the door and I had no idea where the guy went. There was no path, it didn't seem to look like there was some path where the people would have gone. There's a big gravel road in front of me going a bit to the side and the map was telling me to follow some similar path, so I thought maybe I should check it out a bit. Except no, a big Caterpillar tractor sped up along that road and I wasn't planning to walk near that. I saw the guy in the tractor looking at me confused, so the next thing I thought was to go back since I shouldn't even be here. I opened the door and a few people walking away to a platform looked at me weirdly like I did when I saw people entering the door. No one entered after I went through nor when I came out. So after that, I just had to take the detour since I was in a hurry anyway and forgot about it for the rest of the day. TLDR, I guess I found a secret corner where people would despawn except it wouldn't happen if I was there. Redditor 7, this didn't happen to me, but to my dad. He works for a heating and air conditioning company so he often has to go out to people's houses to fix things. About 5 years ago he told me he had a bizarre dream where he went on a call to an elderly woman's house. He'd never seen the house or this woman before, but he said it was bizarre because of how realistic the whole thing felt. He fixed her boiler in the dream, chatted for a bit, and then left. About a week later his company gets a call from an elderly woman needing her boiler fixed. They send my dad on the job. When he arrived, he said it was the exact same house from his dream and the same old lady. He knew her name before he even had to ask and knew his way around the house without having gone inside yet. When she opened the door, she said, "Hi Gary," and when he asked how she already knew his name, she said she had a dream last week that her boiler broke and that my dad is the one who came to fix it, so she just knew that would be his name. Two complete strangers, never having met each other, had the exact same dream that they would meet each other, and they did. The whole thing is so crazy. Redditor 8, not creepiest but it was recent. I was standing outside work, having a smoke. I was looking at the bike rack and thinking about how it was silly they just placed one there and didn't bolt it down or anything. Then a bird footprint showed up. Just one footprint. Like a ghost bird put just 1 foot down in the middle of the otherwise undisturbed snow. It happened right in front of me. I was looking exactly where it happened when it happened. Very weird. Most likely the snow just happened to collapse in that shape, but still it was strange. Redditor 9, I was sitting in my office one day, when my desk phone rings, and it is my undersheriff asking me to bring him all the reports, dispatch logs, any documentation ref to a specific. So I get it all together, and start towards his office. I meet him in the hallway, and hand him the paperwork. He asked what it was. I told him it's the XXXXX documentation you asked for. He then swears he never asked me for it. That he had just arrived and had not called my office. He was on his way down the hall to ask me to get it together. Redditor 10, not sure if this counts. I went into sleep paralysis in my dorm room and heard my roommate ask if I wanted donuts, and she started elaborating on donuts. I couldn't move, speak, or breathe the entire time. When I woke up, I asked her if she was talking to me about donuts. She says, "No. But that's weird because my boyfriend just texted me pictures of a donut he just got. And then later that day some random people came up to me and offered me a free donut." Other dreams: I had a dream about a hamster running on a wheel. When I woke up my roommate said someone threw a hamster down the trash chute. I also had a dream about a white rat, and the next day my friend texted me that his white pet rat had died. Redditor 11, when I was a kid, I had Metroid Fusion for the GBA. That game was hella hard for, I don't know, 8 years old me. There was a final boss, a spider, that was difficulty spike in an already difficult game, and I got stuck there. Then, one day, I lost the game. Since I hadn't finished it, and I really liked it, I convinced my parents to buy it again. I played and finished it. I was quite happy. Then, one day, in my grandparents' house, I found a Metroid Fusion cartridge. It had a single save file more or less around the spider boss. I thought I had 2 save files, but whatever, I had found my game. Fast forward a couple of years and I get a call from my great aunt. She was moving, and when removing some furniture, found a GBA cartridge, Metroid Fusion, that her grandson told her was mine. I didn't believe her, of course. I went to see it. Exactly, that was my original cartridge exactly as I remembered it. I have no idea where the cartridge I found at my grandparents' house came from. I asked every possible cousin, not that we are too many, like 4, everyone I could think of, and nobody had ever owned the game. Heck, only one of them had a GBA. I'm sure there is a reasonable explanation, but I can't find it. Redditor 12, to this day I cannot explain what happened. Was watching TV with friends and we landed on some old 80s movie I used to watch over and over but hadn't seen in a long time. I had the dialogue memorized and it all instantly came back and I knew what was going to be said next. Here's the freaky part: we changed channels and kept trying to find something to watch. I noticed that everything we watched was the same. I knew every line of dialogue as if I was remembering it from having memorized it. These were all things I had never watched before. Here's the real freaky part: it started happening even when my friends were talking. An instant before they said anything, I knew word for word what they were saying. The effect only lasted an hour or so, but it was bizarre. Redditor 13, I went to camp when I was around 12ish. Took one of those disposable film cameras with me. Cell phones were still in flip phone phase and I didn't have one. Took a picture of 2 people I made friends with there. One of them appears in the photo twice in 2 different poses entirely. Still weirds me out when I come across that photo. Edit. Here is the photo in question. Sorry for the poor quality. Wasn't a good photo to begin with. Redditor 14, my friend and I each ordered those Pizza Hut personal pizzas. The cashier gives me the boxes and I give one to her. I had ordered cheese. I hate pepperonis, and when I opened the box, it was pepperoni. Hey, I said, I got your pizza. We switched, and when I opened the second box, it was pepperoni again. They must have gotten the order wrong, my friend says. I go back to the cashier and state that we had gotten 2 peps instead of 1 cheese and 1 pepperoni. He opens it to check. There was a cheese and pepperoni. Redditor 15, when I was about 9, I was eating dinner in my room for some reason. I was sat at my dresser that had a big mirror, and my dad came in to check on me. He asked me if I wanted some more tea, to which I said yes and handed him my cup. I watched him walk out and close the door, looked over to see my cup, full of tea, right from where I picked it up. I asked my dad about it. He said he never came in my room. Redditor 16, I always experience deja vu moments. Pretty much every other day I can predict what's about to happen or be said several times. I'll always awake with a gasp and a feeling of like I just fell from a skyscraper or something. Redditor 17, not sure if it's classed as a glitch in the Matrix. But when I was 8 I had a conversation with my pop while playing PlayStation for a few minutes. Mum came in freaking out and crying and shook me. I suddenly forgot about the whole conversation like a second later and Pop wasn't there. Mom was apparently listening for a minute and realized I was talking to Pop. Which was really bizarre because he died years before I was born and Mom had never told us anything about him. I remembered what his face looked like and described it to Mom perfectly. I really don't know how to feel about it because I didn't feel anything when it happened. Mom was shook for over a week and kept on asking me questions, but I couldn't remember anything other than his appearance and him standing watching me play PlayStation. Redditor 18, I have to preface this with some backstory about a man named Zeus. Now Zeus has a reputation around Knoxville, Tennessee as a bit of an eccentric character. My brother has told me stories about him making people pass out just by whispering in their ear, giving people glass pendants and saying this is the color of your soul, just generally unusual stuff. He was thought of as a magic man of sorts. Well, long story short, my brother and I were walking through the West Town Mall when we saw him. Now let me tell you, this guy is incredibly recognizable. I'm talking 6 feet 5 inches black dude with a gray goatee, nose piercings, and at least 4 rings per finger. He always carried a staff and wore a floor-length black duster jacket with huge ass buckles on the front. This was Zeus. We saw him walking just a bit ahead of us and then turned towards an exit. Naturally, we lost sight of him for probably 60 seconds after he turned the corner and left the mall. The weird thing was after my brother and I passed that same exit, and not more than about 30 seconds later, We were coming upon another exit entrance on the other side of the mall when all of the sudden out pops, you guessed it, good old Zeus the Magic Man. Now this is a big place, it takes 5 minutes to walk the length of it. There is absolutely no way he could have made it to the opposite side of this place in the time he did. Even if he was sprinting or was somehow able to go up and over building, 60 seconds is just not enough time. This man teleported. There's just no other way to slice it. TL, Doctor, I saw a man teleport in Knoxville a few years ago with my brother. No, I wasn't on drugs. Edit, a word. Redditor 19, I woke up from a dream where I died, and when I opened my eyes all I saw were faces all over the wall staring at me. It was terrifying. I got up from my bed and turned on the light. The faces didn't go away. I left the room and made sure I was awake. I wrote on my computer, drank some water, and when I went back in my bedroom the faces were gone. I believe this is a sleep hallucination, which I had another experience of as well. Redditor 20, I have a drawing tablet. The pen stylus thing that comes with it has no means of attaching to anything, so it's very easy to misplace. Anyway, this May, I lost the pen. I thought I'd put it in my backpack, but I checked every pocket, basically turned the whole thing inside out, no pen. I did, however, find my favorite pencil, which I'd lost a few months before. I had a strange sense of certainty that the pen would turn up as soon as I got a new one, and $30 for an easy-to-lose plastic cylinder seemed a bit steep at the time, so I put off ordering a replacement for a while. Eventually I did, though. I briefly lost the replacement pen while visiting my grandparents, and during the search I meticulously went through my backpack again and found nothing, before I found it in the pocket of my sweater. A few weeks later, I looked in my backpack for my favorite pencil. It was nowhere to be found, but the first thing I pulled out of the backpack pocket was the original tablet pen. I immediately went and found the replacement pen and put the two of them together to make sure they both existed in the same universe they did. The only explanation I can think of is an infestation of pocket gremlins. Or perhaps there's a portal to another dimension in my backpack. TL, DR, lost $30 tablet pen in my backpack, found long lost favorite pencil in its place. Ordered new pen. While looking for favorite pencil, proceeded to find original pen in the backpack I'd already thoroughly searched twice. Favorite pencil nowhere to be found. Redditor 21, when I was a teenager, I was in my room and decided to go to the kitchen to make a sandwich. I looked at the clock before I left, 6:48 p.m. Went to the kitchen, made an awesome sandwich, got some chips, and a drink. This probably took me at least 10 minutes. When I walked back into my room, the clock still said 6:48 p.m. I stood there for a bit really confused, then it turned to 6:49. Redditor 22, recurring dream of getting to the end of semester at uni and not having done any assignments, been to my lectures or gone to a single tutorial, suddenly realizing wow I'm fucked. I graduated 3 years ago. I will sometimes go like 30 minutes to an hour after waking up before realizing I in fact have not missed a semester of work and did in fact graduate. If someone were to ask me about our assignment I wouldn't hesitate to believe it was a legitimate question. Redditor 23, I was waiting tables about 12 years ago, and my coworker forgot to put in a food order for a 3-top table. He also forgot what the order was. I was laughing at him stressing out trying to figure it out, and I said it was probably fried mozzarella, a cheeseburger with no onions, and chicken fingers. I was completely joking, and that was their exact order. It freaked me out. I made him let me run the food to the table to make sure he wasn't fucking with me. Redditor 24, sometimes I'll be talking to someone I've never met, and very specific facts about them will pop into my consciousness out of nowhere, like this person had a golden retriever that died in 2009. Then they'll inevitably bring up the fact that I mentioned without me saying anything first. Sometimes seconds later, sometimes years. Redditor 25, once I was driving home from my brother's after a night of heavy drinking. I was hungover and half asleep when I saw a black cat cross the road ahead of me. Didn't think anything of it until another black cat crossed the road ahead of me about 10 seconds later. Both times was from left to right. I don't think it was the same cat. Kinda weird, but I kept going. A couple mins go by and I stop at a stop sign as a Domino's semi-truck crossed in front of me left to right. Again, I obviously don't think anything of it until I'm at a stoplight when another Domino's semi passes in front of me from left to right. Now I'm wide awake and borderline freaking out. I keep going but got stopped at the very next stoplight too. Once again, from left to right, I saw a super nice brand new blue Mustang. I love Mustangs, so I noticed it and was admiring it, and then 3 cars behind the first Mustang was another Mustang, same year and color. 3 times in a matter of 5 minutes, I had duplicates cross my path from left to right. WTF? Edit, this was the day after said drinking. I was not intoxicated and there is never a good enough reason to ever drink and drive. Redditor 26, I went to the state fair about 45 minutes away from the city I live in, and while looking at the quilt show I thought to myself, these are really pretty. I bet my friend could make something like that. And right then, this person grabs me in a hug from behind. Turned out to be the same friend who had visited the state fair on the same day and ended up in the same area of the fair at the same exact time. Creepy. Redditor 27, not mine, and I don't know if it counts as a glitch in the matrix, but my sister's and mom's by extent. So a little backstory. My sister was born with heart complications and nobody thought she'd survive unless she went under a certain surgery, and even then she'd be heavily disabled and not live past 12. My mom told me that my grandmother prayed and asked for my sister to live and to take me instead. Please let her be healthy. She died August 2007 and my sister was born a few months later, same year. My sister lived without the surgery, is now 10, and is healthy as she can be. The doctors said they didn't know how it happened and called it a miracle. Now for the creepy part. One day my sister and mom were doing something, I don't remember. But my sister turns to my mom and says, "A long time ago, I was born in 19XX, forgot the year. That was the year my grandmother was born." We never told her that. Another time she said her favorite food was X again, I can't remember. That was my grandma's favorite food. Again, never told her that. She did the same thing again except with my grandma's old home in Afghanistan. Never told her about that either. My sister doesn't even remember saying any of this. We asked. Then again, she was really young when she said these, so maybe she legitimately forgot. Whatever the case, it's creepy but also interesting and a little heart-wrenching warming. TL, dear grandma died same year sister was born. Sister was not supposed to live for long after birth, but she did. Sister starts saying creepy things that make me think she's my grandma reincarnated. Redditor 28, the other day I was sitting watching Stranger Things, hungover as hell. All of a sudden I got the urge to say out loud to the empty room, "Hey man." 3 seconds later one of the characters on screen starts the scene with "Hey man." Not near the craziest, but most recent. Redditor 29, deja vu at the moment my mom died. Redditor 30, sometimes I swear that lights flicker in whatever room I am in. It's like someone turned all the present lights off simultaneously. I even asked those around me if they saw the lights turn off. I don't recall blinking any time this has happened either. I wonder if I have mini nanosecond blackouts. Redditor 31, as often as every couple days I'll vividly remember being exactly where I am as it is, but at a different time, like repeating a cutscene in a video game. It's frequent enough I've repeatedly questioned the legitimacy of my existence. Redditor 32, my wife and I were driving last weekend when all of a sudden Siri activated on my phone and said, "I'll pretend I didn't hear that." Over the radio. Freaked us both out for a bit. Redditor 33, I was at a beach house my family rented. I dropped my switchblade comb on the floor. I bent over to pick it up and next to it was a second switchblade comb, almost the exact same kind. Redditor 34, my friend and I were talking to our roommate and her girlfriend one night. Roommate had just received her new phone and was sitting in bed using it while the 4 of us chatted. So, roommate had sat her phone down while we were all chatting. She goes to pick it back up and it's gone. Like, she had just sat it down for a few minutes tops before she noticed that the thing has puffed. I call it for her and we can't hear it. We take the comforter and sheets off the bed and shake them all out. We look under the bed, behind it, everywhere we can. That phone is gone. Even though we hadn't left her room at all during our conversation when the phone disappeared, we tore apart the whole apartment trying to find it. Finally, we decided to try her car. It was in the locked trunk. We lived on the 3rd floor and were all in the same room watching her use it before it teleported. Redditor 35, I tend to be pretty good at guessing when someone near me location or close to me emotionally is going to die. I can rarely guess who though. The first time I remember I was maybe 19 or 20. Mom's mom had been visiting and calling a lot around then. One night she calls and Mom picks up. I tell Mom, I think something bad's gonna happen, she should go to the hospital. She tells Grandma and they both apparently laugh and assure me everything is fine. Next day she has a heart attack around noonish, apparently she hadn't been able to go out and get her heart medicine. I honestly have no idea how I could have actually known, considering I didn't know about her medicine or even talk to her that day. Another time, I just got it in my head that an old lady was going to die. For some reason I thought it was going to be one of the dogs that had been sick lately, but it ended up one of the neighbor ladies. She died 2 days later. I never even met her or knew she had been sick. A lot more times happened in the past year or so. My dad's mom calls me even though we hadn't talked in years. She was in the hospital. She said she was doing fine, but something told me it would be good to visit. I tried to the next day but had no way to actually get there. I ended up finding out the next day that she had died the morning of the day I was able to get there. At her funeral, my dad was there, and I just knew it would be the last time I'd see him. He ended up dying like a week later. Another time, I thought my great-grandma was going to pass because she had just gotten emergency surgery. Ended up her sister got deathly ill out of nowhere. Everyone is planning to visit the next day. I'm freaking out saying we need to go now. They eventually calm me down. She ends up dying very early the next morning, like 5 a.m. When my great-grandma actually was on her deathbed, everyone was rushing down saying she had maybe 3 days to live. I end up getting down there from another state and as soon as I get there I'm like I think she has until mid-September, and lo and behold she passes on the 14th. There were also quite a few times this happened when I was homeless. Quite a few people ended up voting not too far from the shelter. One of the times I even said, directly to one of the people who ended up dying like a week later, I can't shake the feeling that someone here's gonna die soon. I'm not usually wrong about this but I really hope I am, haha. And the dude's like, well I hope it ain't me lol. According to my mom I could do that when I was way younger too, though I don't really remember. Apparently I was really adamant we get one of my great-great-aunts McDonald's. Mom thought I was just on some nonsense because I was like 4 years old, which I can see why lol. Next week around the time we usually go to visit we find out she died from not having enough salt in her, which is just a really weird way to die at that age, I think. Redditor 36. Don't have an answer but if you want stories like that you could check out our Glitch in the Matrix. It's a pretty cool subreddit. Redditor 37. In college I lost a pair or Arnett sunglasses. Being dirt poor, I couldn't buy another pair. Few months later, I was at a party with a live band playing. People were dancing, but I was hanging out on the couch with a bottle of cheap rum. A pair of Arnett sunglasses dropped into my lap, same model as the ones I had before, just a different lens color. Me actually being the honest type, went around to everyone at the party asking if they lost their sunglasses. No one claimed them. Got my sunglasses back from the Matrix. Redditor 38. I have a jeans pants that has a hole in the left pocket. Sometimes I forget about the hole and put some coins in it, so the coins fall into my pants and end inside my shoes. One day that happened, but when I checked, the coin ended up in the right shoe instead of the left one. Redditor 39. Weird coincidences. I had a dream where my friend was asking me how my other friend was doing. I hadn't talked to my other friend in a while. I woke up and saw that my other friend texted me. Redditor 40. One time I was doing the dishes and accidentally dropped a glass to the floor. I just winced and waited for the sound of smashing glass, but it never came. I swear I looked everywhere for the smashed glass, or even an intact one but never found a trace of it. I've never been more confused in my entire life than that moment. What's really freaky is that I've read online that people have had similar experiences. Redditor 41. Here's one from my brother. I don't think our mom believed him, but I certainly do. He seemed spooked when he got home. He was sitting in the passenger seat, driving home alongside my mom. A bright green car swerved and hit them, knocking bits and pieces of glass into his arm. He jolted awake afterwards, just in time to see the green car pass them. He claimed he felt the marks the glass left afterwards too. Redditor 42, I'm sure this will get buried, but it just happened today. Not really creepy but pretty weird. I work at a vet clinic. When we take blood from dogs and cats we send it to an outside laboratory. Once the blood is drawn and ready to go, we put the tubes in a Ziploc bag with the requisition form to be sent to the lab. To save money and the environment, the laboratory reuses Ziploc bags. They send us used ones when we run out. Some clinics, but not mine, will write the patient's name with Sharpie on the bag, so naturally sometimes we get bags with random names on them. So today I took blood from a dog named Floyd. Once his blood was ready I went to grab a bag to put it in. We keep our bags loose in a basket in a drawer. It's kind of a mess of bags in there. I grabbed a completely random bag. In Sharpie on the bag it said Floyd. It was like one of those magic tricks where the volunteer signs a card and it appears in someone's wallet. Floyd isn't exactly a super common pet name, but it is awesome. If it had said Bella or Bailey or Max it would be less weird. But, Floyd. Redditor 43, when I was 16, I lived in a house where the previous owner had committed suicide. He offed himself in the unfinished basement a few years earlier. Unlike many of the stories that you read here, my parents weren't particularly religious. My mother took us to church every now and again, but it never really stuck. She was a little strange though, or so I thought. But doesn't everyone think their mother is strange? Mine would constantly tell the story of seeing an old man that would sit on the end of her bed and watch her while she slept. I never saw or even felt anything strange or different in that house until that day. The basement was still mostly unfinished when we moved in. You'd walk down the stairs from the kitchen and into a room that had a rock wall and a wood-burning stove. There was also a big old pool table that we would play on quite a bit. Just to the left of that room was the laundry. It was mostly just an empty room, but the washer and dryer were on one wall and wooden shelves made out of 2x4s and plywood on the opposite wall. We used those shelves to store random stuff like boxes, books, and, for some reason, a basketball. So one Saturday, I'm home alone as teenagers often are, and I decide I need to wash clothes so that I can go out and drag Main Street later that night to, hopefully, pick up a hottie. So I carried a basket of dirty clothes down the stairs, around the corner and into the laundry room. I put the basket in the floor, opened the washing machine and began loading the clothes when I hear the basketball fall off of the shelves behind me. I, of course, turn around and look at it, not really thinking much of it at this point. It just rolls slowly towards me, so I do what pretty much any teenage boy would do. I kicked it hard enough that it should have rolled across floor, that bounced off of the shelves, and made a horrible ruckus. But it didn't. Oh, it rolled, quickly, to the middle of the room. Then, inexplicably, it stopped. In the middle of the room. Away from the shelves. Away from the other walls. Just, there, in the middle of the room. It just stopped rolling and sat there. It was then that fear hit me harder than at any time before or since. I ran out of the laundry room, around the corner, up the stairs, and out the back door of the little yellow house. I jumped into my truck and drove away. I don't return to the house until late that night when my family was asleep. I snuck into the house, went to my bedroom and fell fast asleep. Redditor 44, this happened about a week ago. It was 2 a.m., I was deep asleep and I hear my son, in a panicked voice shout, "Daddy, where are you?" I'm instantly awake and sit up. I'm about to go check on him except I notice, floating about 2 feet in front of me, an oval glass window, think something like a porthole on a ship with a face staring through it. The window even had condensation and the face was surprised that I saw them. I've never been more convinced that I'm actually a battery strapped onto a Bacta tank. Redditor 45, when my sister and I were kids, we were acting up in the car and my mom threatened to throw this toy we had out the window if we didn't stop. Of course, we didn't stop. Mom followed through. By the time we got home, the exact toy was sitting on our porch. We still can't explain it. Redditor 46, was eating an apple and I just finished, so I threw the core into the bin. Turned around and something dropped down onto my head from above. Turned back around and looked at the ground to find the apple core at my feet. Was home alone and it was 2 a.m. Did not sleep that night. Redditor 47, on my 14th birthday, the phone rang. I looked at my dad as he walked towards the phone and I said, "Grandma's dead." It was my uncle calling to inform us of her death. There are more, but that's the first one that popped into my head. Edit, a pronoun. Redditor 48, I'll be thinking about an episode of some show, and the next time I watch that show on TV, it's that episode. It happens more often than not. I'm not even trying to predict the next episode, it'll just pop into my head. Redditor 49, I used to own 3 all-black cats. Seeing them walk past the door one after the other in succession was always fun. Redditor 50, I recently saw the exact same 2 posts on a Bangladeshi whittling forum, a few days apart. The creepy bit was that I got deja vu, the vague feeling of familiarity, reading the first post. Then when reading the second one replying to it, it hit me in the face that I'd seen that exact same conversation the previous week. Redditor 51, my great-grandmother has a story that one day my great-grandfather came home from work, made coffee and sat in his chair and read the paper. The phone rang and when she answered it, it was my great-grandfather from the service station. The car broke down and he was gonna be home late. Redditor 52, one night when I was a kid, probably 10 or 11, I went with my mom to go pick up my older brother from his friend's house. There was a storm that night, and when my mom went to the door to get him, I was just chillin' in the car alone. My mom was having a conversation with my brother's friend's parents or something I remember cause she always did this and I was trying to find ways to entertain myself. I had been reading the book The Lightning Thief, a story about a kid who finds out he's the son of Poseidon, basically Greek gods and shit for those who don't know about the series, and I like the idea of having powers like that. I sat in my seat, took a breath, then, in a somewhat exaggerated movement, I pointed out the front window at the street, just about exactly where I was pointing, at the end of the street about 50 feet away, lightning struck. I'm still somewhat convinced to this day that I have some kind of cool powers that haven't shown themselves yet. Maybe I should lay off the anime. Redditor 53, probably gonna get buried, but as a kid I had a little Lego skateboard with detachable wheels. One day I was playing in our dining room and dropped one of the wheels on out hardwood floor. I saw it hit the ground, then it was just gone. Mind you, this was a bare room, just a couch and desk at the time. I looked around for 20 minutes to no avail. About 4 years later, I was just walking around the house and in the same exact spot that I dropped it, was that little Lego wheel. In the 4 years between we had changed the location of the couch and desk, added a carpet, painted the walls. It was definitely odd. Redditor 54, in elementary school I had a few odd dreams that seemed to relate to real life. Like a dream of coming across a car crash the night my uncle died in a car crash. After elementary school I thought this stopped. But a few years ago I was reminded of a dream I had back then. The dream was that a new school had been built on the hill that overlooked the old one. While I was finishing high school this came true. A new school building was built on the hill overlooking the old one. Same height, color, and location. They had to buy out a bunch of homes to build there. Redditor 55, a few years ago I was driving home from work. I worked a town over only about 10 minutes from home and had done this drive a million times, lived there my whole life. I was driving along like normal and I have no idea what happened, but the only way to describe it is like a blackout. All of a sudden a second later I had the sensation of waking up or snapping out of it and literally was looking around feeling like I had no idea where I was but just a vague sense of familiarity. It was like I didn't recognize my surroundings but it was on the tip of my tongue. Felt like I'd been driving for hours. It really took me a minute to gain my bearings and realize I was on that same main road I've driven so many times. Redditor 56, I'm a sophomore in high school and a new kid his first day, never seen him before, comes in and sits down quietly next to me. I look at him and say, "Hello Michael James, your youth pastor that you used to skateboard with misses you." Kinda shocked us both that was his full name and he had just moved from up north where, you guessed it, he went to church with a skateboarding youth pastor that was like a dad to him. Never had anything like that happen before that nor since. Redditor 57, I used a tough, metal rotring mechanical pencil from 2014-2016 during my job as a behavior specialist and at night during grad school. It was also the only thing I would use at work in the grade schools unless we were having an IEP meeting and needed official signatures. I loved that pencil. During June 2016, one of the students who was graduating from the high school where I work asked where they could buy one since they always liked the one I used during our meetings. I gave it to him, telling him to take care of it and make use of it when he started college in the fall. He moved to the East Coast and I haven't heard from him since. November 2016, my fiancée and I are driving home from her family's Thanksgiving. Southern Oregon coast, 5 hours from where we live. An hour into the rain-soaked drive, we hydroplane going down a hill on Highway 101, slingshot across the road, hit the ditch and roll the car 4 times. Off into the forest. Once we crawl out of the car and climb back onto the road, and flag down some help, my fiancée asks me if I can get her medications from the car. She was going through chemotherapy at the time. I climb back through the trees, squeeze my way through the broken windshield, and plan to pry her medication bag from the back seat. I press my hand on the underside of the roof to get leverage, embedding some glass shards in my palm in the process. When I lifted my hand from the roof, amid the crunched glass was the metal mechanical pencil. After a miraculous no-one-died car accident, in the middle of the forest, in the middle of a rainstorm, it was there. TLDR, I destroyed my car but found my favorite pencil. Redditor 58, it was a snowy, icy morning. My father was driving, my mother in the passenger seat, and I was in the back. I was about 8 at the time, so this was about 23 years ago and still can see it like it was yesterday. We had just reached the bottom of a pretty steep hill in the road, our tail end would have been facing the top of the hill. We pulled into the turn lane at the base of the hill to make a left-hand turn into my mom's work where we were dropping her off. As we were stopped, waiting for traffic to clear, another car pulled up behind us, barely coming to a stop because of the icy conditions, but avoided making contact with the back end of our car. The speed limit would have been 45 or 55 miles per hour, for good conditions. Just then, another vehicle attempted to stop behind the vehicle that was behind us. I heard my dad mention, as he looked in his rear view mirror, that the car was going too fast. In an instant, our car was about 50 yards ahead, pulled off to the right side of the road. We all looked back as the speeding car crashed into the car that was stopped behind us in the turn lane. The car that was behind us that got rear-ended was pushed into oncoming traffic. The driver of the vehicle that was behind us was killed instantly. To this day, my father, mother, nor I remembers our car moving out of the way. My dad swears he never touched the gas pedal, and we were at least 50 yards ahead of the accident in a matter of a second. I still remember hearing the metal and glass breaking. We immediately had the conversation in the car that we didn't know how our car moved. TLDR, our car was transported ahead to avoid an accident that resulted in a fatality, with no recollection of our vehicle moving. Redditor 59, I was 17 years old. Pokemon Gold had just come out, and I had a pre-order for a copy of Pokemon Gold and a brand spanking new Game Boy Color. Keep in mind that Pokemon Gold was tightly under wraps at that time and there was almost no coverage on the games until they were released, not even in big gaming magazines back then. It was months before the game was released and I had a dream involving Game Boy Color graphics and the plotline of your rival looking into the lab before stealing the Pokemon of his choice with the right colors and everything else. I don't remember more about it, I just remember that in the dream, I talked to the rival and he acted exactly like he did. Pushing your player character away to mumble to himself. In the dream, I knew I was playing a Pokemon game. I woke up and just had a that was a weird dream, I should stop playing so much Pokemon. I turn on my Game Boy Color, slap in the brand new cartridge and nearly shat myself as I relived the experience in the starting of the new game. I still have no idea what the heck was with the dream preview of Pokemon Gold. Redditor 60, I lost my jewelry pliers a year or two ago. Searched the house every few months when I needed them, and never found them. Then, a week ago, I opened up the furnace cabinet door to clean the dust off, and there they were. Wedged in the hole in the bracing in the back of the door, So I had to wiggle them a bit to get them out, but there was no way I could have missed them the many other times I'd been in that cabinet. I've had things go missing before, then reappear where I'd already looked, but this was the weirdest. Redditor 61, a somewhat new friend, met him less than a year ago, within very short time, maybe 2 months. We had in some way bonded so good that he and I would be thinking, saying, or about to write the exact answer to messages in group chats. Newer example, he had joined a group on Discord which I made for some old friend of mine, so that we could still have contact. One evening I had to turn off my PC because of lightning striking near my house. One of the old friends and I had been texting just before that, and my new buddy would then join, which was quite cool, but as he was on PC he was able to write faster than me. I believe 90% of my messages from that point in the evening were stuff like agreed, exactly, couldn't have said it better myself, etc. We talked about it the very next day. I told him every time I had written that, I was just about to say the same. Not just the same, but the exact wording and such. Quite frankly awesome, but a bit scary at the same time. Redditor 62, about 10 years ago, my husband and I were sitting in the living room on the couch. He lit up a cigarette and laid his Zippo lighter on the couch between us. About 30 minutes later, he decided to lit up another one and goes to grab the lighter. It was gone. He asked if I moved it, but I had not touched it. We looked all around the couch, including turning it over to look underneath, but no lighter. A couple of months later, we were moving to a new place. We made a conscious effort to keep a lookout for this lighter, especially when we took the couch apart to move it. However, the lighter was never found. Still creeps me out when I think about it. Redditor 63, my corgi Jack's face was all blurred and twisting like the Apple photo manipulation filter while he stood in my hallway. It returned to normal and he just kinda looked at me. Redditor 64, I did a hobby leatherworking course one summer and discovered I knew how to use all of the tools correctly without being shown. I ended the course with a nice pair of shoes that I made for myself while everyone else had made simple things like pouches or purses. I have no idea how I know how to make things out of leather. Redditor 65, had a dream I got fired one time. It was convincing enough that I woke up, got out of bed and started thinking about how to tell my family. Looked at where to apply for my next job. Then I realized it was 5 a.m. and I'm an idiot. Redditor 66, one time when driving to the gym I was on a T-shaped road with flat surroundings, so no obstructions of cars going left and right. I was driving the vertical road and this van was driving the horizontal side of it. Makes sense. Well, when I was approaching the stop sign I noticed the van glitch or skip, almost like it just disappeared and reappeared. Point A where it disappeared with a gap of about 25 feet then appeared in point B. I tried rationalizing it by thinking I must have blinked really slow, or maybe I zoned out, but I couldn't convince myself because I knew what I saw. Redditor 67, just happened yesterday, still ducks with me because a security guard and an instructor told me, on different occasions, that I was seen walking around in class earlier than necessary. Not saying a word, just walking. Both of them said I was wearing white. I wore a black dress yesterday, I even came to school late. So that couldn't have been me. Redditor 68, not really sure if this counts, but I have never been able to make sense of it in my mind. It was my first job at a girls' clothing store in the mall. Man comes in, he's wearing a cap and is on his phone. Buys the cheapest thing he can find, which was a pair of earrings. I can't remember the exact amount, but it was less than $10. He hands me a $100 bill. I checked to make sure it was real. If you worked or work in retail, this is a standard thing. It was. I wring him out and lift the cash drawer to put the bill underneath. Give the guy 90 something in change and he leaves. At the end of the night when we counted the drawer, $100 were missing. I don't think much of it. Either a coworker stole it because I know I didn't, or it really went missing somehow. Everyone gets written up, including myself. A year later, same guy comes again. He did the same thing and hands me the 100 bill. At this point things are starting to click and I'm getting a really uneasy feeling. I make sure I see that I placed the 100 under the cash drawer, and that day it was the only one. Guy leaves with his earrings, and what do you ducking know? At the end of the night the 100 was gone? I explained it to my boss and she didn't believe me. The guy was leaving with 90 and change and taking back his 100 even if I made sure that it was placed under the drawer and I didn't drop it somehow. After I put in my 2 weeks for other reasons, one of my co-workers has the same incident with him months later, and my boss came up to me to apologize and to ask me again how everything happened. To this day I don't understand how the duck he was able to hand me the money and after I close the drawer get it back. Redditor 69, this is not the thread to be reading while quietly sitting on the toilet at 2 a.m. Redditor 70, not sure if this counts or not, but I apparently look like a lot of people. Random people have confused me for their older younger brother before, which is the majority of it, but I've also been confused as someone's husband, boyfriend, father. It freaks me the heck out sometimes. It even happens to friends of mine. A girl I'm friends with thought I was her brother who lives in the UK, even though we had been chatting face to face a day earlier. It's like everyone else's brain can't always comprehend what I look like, so it just fills the image of me in with another male figure. It even happens rarely with family. I think the worst case was when I saw a friend of mine who's a police officer, and I appeared to him as another officer who had quit a few months ago. I always have to tell people to snap out of it or say no, that's not me, sorry. Redditor 71, my wife wanted food from Panera Bread. I don't like the place, but my wife does, so we hopped in the car and I drove to the nearest one. We get to the parking lot and I pulled up and parked. I start to get out of the car when I notice my wife is giving me the WTF are you doing look. Then I looked around. There's no Panera Bread to be found. Just a bridal dress shop, a Five Guys, and a Starbucks next to a grocery store. Turns out the nearest Panera Bread was 10 minutes in the opposite direction. But I swear, that there was a Panera Bread there before. My wife and I ate there at least 3 times. I know exactly what the interior layout looked like. My wife swears up and down that there's never been a Panera Bread there and that we never ate there. Redditor 72, the Mesabi Trail, in northern Minnesota. I still can't get over this, I have tried to figure this out. Was on a 5-day summer biking trip for a camp. I was one of the counselors, and we had about 20 people in all. 3rd day, near Hibbings, we had an elderly man in his 70s perhaps wearing a gray sweatshirt and sweatpants on a vintage orange bike with a vintage camera going the opposite direction. He was friendly and we waved as he went by. We stopped and ate lunch then went back on the trail, about 4 hours had passed by. The same man came around the bend and waved as he passed. We all stopped and exclaimed it was the same man. Too late, he had sped by past us. We camped for the night. Then the next day we rode another 5-6 hours on a hilly terrain, I kid you not. The same fucking man on the same bike wearing the same clothes came by and waved as he passed. He rode by so quickly and some of the campers just turned around and sped after him. He was nowhere to be seen. Still baffles me to this day. Redditor 73, I watched the light in the guest bedroom turn off and later turn on. Redditor 74, not too creepy but I'm positive I saw Tank Girl on satellite TV years before it came out in theaters. Redditor 75, probably every time I open askreddit and see this same goddamn question posted every few weeks. Redditor 76, I have this thing with me dreaming thinking of things and they happen, right? Well, for preface I work front desk at a hotel. So I had this dream that this guest who I've never seen before in my life kidnapped me and held me captive in one of our rooms. While in the rooms he forcefully injected me with heroin and other drugs. It was crazy, like in the dream I was an outsider looking in. I shook it off because I have crazy off the wall dreams. The dream was about 2 weeks ago. This past weekend I had a child that was staying here come up to me and tell me that the adults in his room left and he was scared. I called the police and they arrested them. They had heroin in their room. And not like a little bit. Like thousands of dollars worth and needles out the ass per the cops' words. Redditor 77, I have a distinct memory of breathing underwater as a child. I was in a pool swimming around under the water and for some reason I just inhaled. And instead of dying I got a lungful of air and kept on swimming. Probably a false memory but it feels very real in my mind. Redditor 78, one time I was having lunch on a pedestrian mall in my city where there are food carts. There was a guy 20 feet away who was eating a burrito. Then, 5 seconds later I looked back at him and he was eating beans and rice. It was scary, y'all. It bothered me so much that I actually confronted him about it after I took some time to build up my courage. It turned out that he still had half the burrito and was saving it for later. Or maybe that's what they want me to think. Redditor79. Okay. This shit I haven't been able to explain other than it being my innate sense that the man I was dating would later turn out to be my domestic abuser. We had just started dating maybe a month in, and my friends already didn't like him. He was rude and outspoken at times. And some of the signs were there, but I was naive and in love. Well, one of the nights I had spent over at his house, and we had just had a fight about something and were making up. He asked for a back rub, which I proceeded to do. Now this guy was hairy and had a hairy back. While I was on his back rubbing, all of a sudden this black mass starts turning into this BLCK twisted tree. The branches are these slithering snakes with red eyes. And they're just swirling, it covers his whole back. It was so ducking clear. I stopped because I'm freaking the duck out inside. Am I really seeing this shit? He notices I've stopped rubbing and wants to know why. Does the hair gross you out? I want to say that the universe was telling me he was evil. Because he turned out to be a ducking, hurtful, abusive, misogynistic bastard. I wish I had listened. Divorced since 2008. Redditor 80, I had a nightmare one time that someone stabbed me. It was super vivid and I remembered it clearly. A year later I was at a concert and I recognized that I was walking by the wall from my dream. My heartbeat rose and out at the crown the same fucking guy appeared walking towards me. He looked kind of pissed, tripping balls, and walked right by without even looking at me. Redditor 81, when I was like 14, I saw this guy on a road driving who looked a lot like me but older and a lot more muscular chest, arms. I remember we exchanged a really confused look. Then a few months ago when I was 21 now, I was driving on the same road. Saw this kid who looked a lot like me, but there were cars behind me on this downhill road and I couldn't stop. Went out of sight. Felt really weird and kind of lightheaded, like I was having a hard time processing it. Weird shit. Drove around, didn't see him. Not gonna lie, it fucked me up a bit. Redditor 82, one night I dreamed I was in my house, but there was this snake girl chilling in the living room. Just chilling there and no one seemed to think it out of the ordinary. It was weird for me because A, in the dream it seemed like we were dating, B, I was afraid of snakes. Then, when I wake up I am no longer afraid of snakes. Redditor 83, I had a dream once where I met my wife's uncle and aunt and had the weirdest conversation you could ever possibly have. Something about Armenians and toilets. I remembered the dream vividly for some reason, but didn't think much of it. Conversation obviously didn't make sense, but didn't matter because dreams are weird. Fast forward months later, I'm having a conversation with my wife's aunt and uncle, first time I met them when I started dating my now wife. They talked to me and I had an airy flashback to my dream a minute before they started talking about Armenians and toilets. The conversation didn't make sense in real life, either. Super trippy. Redditor 84, not really creepy, but phenomenal. My friend and I used to play psychic whenever we bought 1-cent chiclet gum from a gumball machine back when such a thing was possible. There were about 7 different colors, maybe 8, and one of us would predict which color would come out. One time we were at the mall doing this, and I got 14 correct in a row. We were going wild, hooting and hollering and screaming at the insanity of it. No one else seemed to notice us at all. Again, not creepy, and I'm no math expert, but I think the odds are well above 1 in a trillion. Redditor 85, when I was about 12, I spent the night at my cousin's house. He shared a room with his older brother, who was spending the night somewhere else, so we both slept in the same room in different beds. Between the beds was an extra large fish tank. He had a window near the head of his bed, and I had a window at the foot of my bed on an adjacent wall. The closet door and entry door were on the same wall, entry on the left, closet on the right, and there was a chest of drawers to the right of the closet door. Things get weird. I wake up in the middle of the night, startled, and sat straight up in bed. Immediately I was confused about where I was, because my sleepy brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. The chest of drawers was now at the foot of my bed, the closet door was between our beds on the opposite wall, both windows were on the same wall as his bed, and the fish tank was blocking the entry door to the room. My arm hair is standing up as I recall this. After rubbing my eyes a few times, trying to figure it out, and nothing changing, I decide to go back to sleep. Things get weirder. I wake up the next morning and go to the kitchen to eat some cereal where my cousin is already seated in front of a bowl. We talk about what we are going to do that day, and then he suddenly goes, "Dude, I had the weirdest dream last night. I woke up and everything in the room was rearranged." He then described everything exactly as I saw it. I didn't know what to say or do, so I just cried. Dear woke up in the middle of the night at my cousin's house with everything in the room rearranged. Next day, cousin describes things like I saw it. I cried. Redditor 86, I'm from the rural South. Lived the first 17 years of my life there. I now live in the metropolitan South. I was talking to my mom on the phone a few years ago and she kept talking about dinner and I was confused because it sounded like she meant lunch. We then had a very confusing disagreement in which she asserted that the 3 meals a day that I grew up with were called breakfast, dinner, and supper. I only remember breakfast, lunch and dinner supper. I really can't explain this. We are both adamant that we are right and think the other is crazy. But seriously, dinner as a word for the midday meal sounds fucking crazy to me. But apparently that's the way I was raised. Redditor 87, I was walking home from the bus stop when I saw my mom's car pass me by. This wasn't anything unusual. She drove around the corner and I saw the car pull into the driveway. However, no one came out, thinking that she had groceries or something she needed help with. I walked to THW car to help. However, as I looked in the car, there was no one in the car. No one was in the car I had just watched drove by into the driveway and watched as I walked into my driveway. Redditor 88, reading these posts, I wonder if it's normal that children have random hallucinations. One time I saw my brother in the basement bouncing a basketball, but the bounce made no sound when it hit the floor. He was looking at me and then waved. Scariest thing ever. I ran upstairs to tell my parents, which is also where my actual brother was. They just told me to avoid the basement for a while. Redditor 89, don't know if this really counts, but I thought it was weird. When my parents got divorced back in 2001, my mother bought me a camcorder with the divorce money she received. I spent the next 2-3 years making all these little crappy home videos on the camera. I guess I got bored with it or whatever and it ended up in storage for about 13 or so years. In July we were cleaning up storage and I found the camcorder. So I called my cousin and my best friend who were commonly in the videos and we got together and watched all the tapes for probably close to 5 hours. At the time I was a huge Linkin Park fan and had an unhealthy crush on Chester Bennington, which was brought up way too many times by me in the videos. As I got older I got into actual metal and stopped following them, never bothered to listen to anything past Meteora. After finishing the videos, I went home. I looked them up on Wikipedia since it was fresh in my mind and I had no idea what they were up to or even still together. I closed the laptop on Chester's bio page. The next day he kills himself. I remember coming home after hearing about it on FB, opening my laptop and watching the wiki page fresh, and all these were now was, and it had a section added about his suicide. I had not thought about the guy in 13 years. He was fresh on my mind going to sleep the night before he took his own life. Weird coincidence. Redditor 90, I've got a fun one. I don't dream often, but when I do it's always weird. This one time, I had a dream about a close friend of mine. Her and her boyfriend were standing in a room and she was holding him as he was crying about something. I told her about it, and for whatever reason she asked me to describe the room. So I did. Pale yellow walls, carpet, dark brown couch, TV in a weird corner entertainment center. She then sends me a few pictures of the room. It was basically exactly what I described. To this day I don't know what that was about, or what was happening in the dream. Redditor 91, I talked to an ex-girlfriend on a lucid dream. The next morning she told me she dreamed of we having a conversation. Redditor 92, I had a dream that I was playing Assassin's Creed and I wanted to throw a guy but I accidentally killed him. Later that day the same exact thing happened. The really weird thing is I hadn't even played that game yet. It came bundled with AC Revelations and didn't bother playing it until I beat the other one. Redditor 93, I was standing in the supermarket waiting for my BF. Suddenly a man approaches me directly and puts his arms around my waist. I freeze up and then shout. It was my boyfriend. I didn't recognize him. Redditor 94, I was at work and I looked up at a window and the sky was red. I stared at it a few moments and then looked at the window behind me which had a blue sky. When I looked back at the original window it was regular blue again. Redditor 95, this probably won't get seen but, last year I was running a bit late for work and I still had to drop stuff off to get dry cleaned and there was this single space open next to a telephone pole where I then said wow somebody's going to hit that pole. The cleaners were closed that day so I was already pissed and then proceeded to rear end said pole. Redditor 96, me and a friend were driving in his car back in high school. I'm on the phone to some girl, and he calmly looks at me to say the brakes are out. I responded with an expected what are you talking about? He responds with my brakes aren't working says it cool as a damn cucumber. And steps on the brakes and it has no effect on the car. We rushed through a red light, it's been red for a while. This little white car was coming through the intersection. I remember seeing the grill of the car by his window. But nothing happened, the car didn't even honk. We made it to the other side of the intersection unscathed, pulled down a side street and managed to Flintstone stop the damn car. By that time the car slowed down enough. Left the car there for a day, went to move it and never had the problem again. Redditor 97, I was on a road trip with 4 friends in the forest. We were driving through some seriously windy roads. The driver decided to do a lazy U-turn on a corner with little to no visibility around the bend because of the trees. He's halfway through the turn and blocking half the road when I pipe up in the back seat and say man, best clear the road quick. 2 motorbikes could scream around the bend at any moment and slam into the side of the car. The very instant he cleared the road 2 motorbikes screamed around the corner out of nowhere doing about twice the speed limit. The thing was that we were in the middle of nowhere and had seen very little traffic the whole time but the image of the motorbikes just flashed into my head just in time. Redditor 98, sit down friends. This is my only experience with the supernatural. Be it ghosts or Matrix I have no clue. Happened about a month ago and everyone in my family was there for it and none can explain. In my family I'm the guy who bakes. I love hand making cakes and brownies and anything delicious. It was a friend's birthday and I was given the task to make carrot cake. Love it. I go to the store and buy a standard 12 eggs and a pack of butter 4 sticks. The cake is 5 eggs and 1 stick to make. I whip it up and due to my carelessness it sticks to the pan and crumbles apart. My bad, so I have to make a new one. Here's where it gets interesting. I go to the fridge to get more butter and eggs. Only to find I only have 5 eggs left and 2 butters. Seems like no problem. Except the fact that would mean I'm missing 2 eggs and a stick of butter. No one in my family had any reason to use eggs much less a whole stick of butter between me making 2 cakes in a day. I asked them, no one used it or gave it to anyone. There was only 1 butter wrapper in the trash from when I made it earlier. 2 eggs and a butter simply vanished. Was it a baker ghost or did it simply become non-existent? We have never figured out what happened. At first my family kind of brushed it off as some you accidentally did something with it. They didn't appreciate the gravity of what happened until I explained it with the wrapper proof. Weird day that one. Redditor 99, I tend to have really weird sleep sessions of sleeping for a couple of hours, waking up, and then falling asleep again. I barely have any nights without dreams, so every time I wake up and fall asleep I have a new dream usually. From time to time I have the urge to tell someone about a fucked up dream I had, usually my best friend. Keep in mind I usually just keep them to myself. But seemingly whenever I tell her something about my dream something which took place in my dream happens with her life. Sometimes it's just been normal things but sometimes it's pretty strange coincidences about stuff I couldn't know about. For example yesterday I dreamed about how her father she and I were about to fly to Russia. I thought it was funny I'm half Russian. She's from Russia and then she tells me her dad was off to flying to Russia just today. Same happened when I dreamed about her girlfriend, turns out they broke up. Redditor 100, tell I'm not alone with this weird shit. Redditor 101, I was around 10 or 12, laying in my room, unable to fall asleep. Some time passes with me tossing and rolling, when I hear a voice calling out to me. I didn't hear anyone move and the floors creak, so I would have heard footsteps. I stayed in bed with the covers over my head, drenched in sweat but too afraid to get up. They kept calling my name. Then, it just stopped. I waited. If it was somebody, I would hear them grab, walk away or close, but no. To this day I have no idea what that was. Redditor 102, when I was 3 or 4 I swear I was in my bed on the night of Christmas Eve, blinked, and it was Christmas morning. It wasn't like the usual I don't remember my dream but it feels like time has passed. I legitimately blinked and it was morning. Redditor 103, I work for a well-known global hotel company. In a previous position I worked customer service by email, from the contact us link on our reservations website. Our hotel confirmation numbers are 8 digits long, and always start with the number 8 or 9. Our loyalty program also has numbered accounts, 9 digits long. I got an email once from a customer whose membership number started with 0, followed by the exact 8 digits of the confirmation number they were asking about. Redditor 104, when I was a young teenager in secondary school I experienced bullet time in a petrol station. I was with a group of friends buying sweets when I accidentally dropped a 1-pound coin. The coin dropped down to the floor in super slow motion, and I remember just watching it in amazement before quickly bending down to retrieve it. Redditor 105, this is weird and hard to put into words, but continuations to dreams. Like, years apart but I'll remember that it happened years ago upon awakening. But of course is a kind of dream you fight to remember. Also I work at an arena that has a walkway under bleachers. And by God when locking up I feel the need to fucking book it. Redditor 106, when I was a kid my dad would work nights and I'd stay in my mom's bed until he got home. This one night I was up really late and playing my Game Boy and my mom was asleep next to me. When I heard my dad come in I hid it because I knew I shouldn't have been playing it that late. I came back the next morning to get it and it was just gone. I spent months and months looking for it. To the point where my parents bought a replacement. It turns up about a year later in a box of rubber stamps at my nan's house. Redditor 107, didn't happen to me, but to this girl I was seeing briefly at uni. She was drunk in a pub one night, slumped on a sofa, and really wishing she could just be at home in bed without the hassle of walking home, brushing her teeth etc. She drifted off to sleep and woke up in her pajamas in bed. Thought to herself, WTF happened? Glad I'm home though, fell asleep again, and woke up back in the pub. Damn, she thought to herself, that was a weird dream, and drifted off again only to wake up in her bed again. This happened one more time before the next time she woke up in bed she forced herself to get out of bed and get herself a glass of water. Then she went to sleep again in her own bed, and woke up there in the morning. Using Occam's razor I know there's a very rational explanation for this, but the issue that stayed with her, she said, was that from her point of view at no point in this scenario did she go home and nor did anyone see her go. Redditor 108, was at the beach by myself just watching the waves waiting for a friend. All of the sudden it felt like time just slowed down and the waves stopped and I had a sudden flash of an image of my grandpa across my mind dead. Which was weird because of a family argument we haven't spoken in 7 years. I was determined to go see him the next day. Went to go see him and just see if he's okay. Everything seemed fine. 2 days later he had a stroke and died. My mother was so grateful to me for taking her to see her dad after not seeing him in so long just before he died. Hands down one of the most creepiest things that has ever happened. Redditor 109, I dropped the pen near my foot. I looked to where the pen landed, it's actually at the other side of the room. You can't explain that. Redditor 110, my copy of Age of Empires 2 wouldn't run on my computer unless it was my mother who clicked on the icon. I always tried it first, and asked for my mom when it wouldn't start. It would always work for her on her first try. I'm sure it wasn't some parental control thing since A, I watched her just click on the icon and B, she always said yes whenever I asked. Redditor 111, when I was a kid, under age 10-ish, I vividly remember these random periods of time where I'd feel my whole body enveloped in a weird static feeling. I'd tell my parents and the best answer I could come up with is I feel like I shouldn't be alive. Now I have anxiety and panic disorder so I think it was just episodes when I was little, but it's still a weird feeling. Kinda like you're glitching out of the simulation. Redditor 112. As a kid, when my brothers and I had a shared reserve of Duel Masters cards apart from our own decks, there was one card I wanted for myself because it was rare, and we only had one copy of it. So one day when I was home alone, I switched it with some crap one in my deck. And like the idiot I was, I used the deck with that card against them the next time, and they connected the dots because of course they did. So to defend myself, I came up with a bullshit story about some mysterious older kid who came to trade cards at school whose face I didn't see because he was hooded and probably out of town. That's all normal so far, right? Just a kid taking something his brothers wanted and lying about it like an idiot. The creepy part is when they wanted to verify my story, and we went through the reserve. I don't know what the duck had happened, but there was another copy of the card. I was just as surprised as my brothers were, maybe more. But they ended up believing my story of a hooded older kid willing to trade rare cards for common crap ones because there was that second copy of the card to support it. To this day I have no ducking clue where the second one came from, and I don't think I've still told my brothers the truth about it. Edit, correction, it wasn't about the card's power, it was rarity. Redditor 113, I've experienced deja vu a couple of times when I was younger, and while that is certainly freaky, nothing beats its opposite. Jamais vu, which I experienced twice during a period of work-related stress a few years ago. On both occasions I was driving in my car, in perfectly familiar surroundings near my home, when suddenly I had no idea where I was or where I was going. It was like being instantly teleported to a foreign country. It only lasted seconds, but very creepy nonetheless. Until it happened to me, I had no idea that this even existed. Edit, for those of you concerned about my health, yes, I did see a doctor, and so should you if something like this happens to you more than once or lasts longer than a few seconds. My episodes were stress-induced, but more serious conditions can also cause this symptom. Edit 2, if you're on drugs, well there's your problem. Redditor 114, I've got a memory of a shift at work, but it feels like it went by super quickly. I'm not sure if it was a work dream, or an actual day that went by quickly. Redditor 115, put my dog outside. Walk into the living room. There's my dog. Redditor 116, a few weeks ago I was driving through Central California on my way back up north. Having drank a large water bottle and desperately in need of gas, I stopped off a random exit which subsequently was an exit to another freeway. Being the middle of nowhere, it was 3 miles off the beaten path to get to the gas station. After having spent 10 minutes inside, I continue back down the same road 3 miles back to get onto the original freeway. I continue on my journey. I'm traveling for about 15 miles and I pass by the same exit, same deviated freeway that I exited from miles before. I went pale and looked at Google Maps on my phone. It was in fact the exact same place I had chosen to stop at before. I still haven't come up with a viable reason as to why or how this could have happened, back roads, etc., and haven't experienced anything like this before. Redditor 117, I woke up one morning and a single shoelace of mine was missing. Gone without a trace. There is absolutely zero explanation for where that shoelace went. My mom doesn't even like talking about it. Redditor 118, one time in undergrad I was taking a nap between classes, and I set an alarm for an hour or so. I had a dream about going to my next class, woke up and thought nothing of it. Got ready for class and woke up again, got ready for class, made it out the dorm and woke up again. This happened 6 or 7 more times. Each time I got a little further. I kept trying different things to see if I was actually awake that time, like touching the wall, and everything felt completely normal until I'd randomly wake up and it would happen all over again. My mom called me and I just screamed into the phone, "Is this real or not?" Pretty sure she thought I was losing my mind or on drugs, but she assured me it was real, and I spent the next 2 or 3 days questioning reality. Redditor 119, had this really horrifying moment happen to me when I was about 10 years old. At the moment I lived in Colombia. So at about 2 p.m. I was listening to metal music and then some Rammstein. My mom had told me to stop listening to devil's music, and then went on a rant and we got into a little argument. She then told me to be careful as things could happen for being a bad son. Well, I pay no attention and go about my ways, call my friend that I'm going over to play some Xbox 360 and get on my way. Once I am around the corner of his house, I see this weird looking guy, kind of homeless looking, standing outside a hair salon looking inside, as if asking for money or whatever, pretty casual in my home country. I walk past him and then he just says, "Hey, stop," and I turn around and think to myself, this guy just wants money, well too bad, and he asked me, "Do you know who Satan is?" I said yes. He then shows me a tattoo that appeared on his arm out of nowhere and says I am his son, and at this point I am like, okay, what the fuck? I say, "Hey man, I'm very sorry but my friend is waiting for me, I have to go," and start slowly walking away, get to my friend's front door, and he says to me, "I have a 6-shooter with me. If you try to run around that corner, easy, I will shoot you exactly 6 times. I do not miss," and I am panicking at this point. I really wanted to cry. He then searches for my bag and see that I have my Xbox controller, along with some games and money, and then I say, "You can take them if you want, you can sell them for a lot, but please don't hurt me," and he laughs and says, "Haha, you know what? Don't worry, but next time I see you, lend me some money," to which I reply, "Yeah, okay. I will do, sir." He starts walking away. I frantically knock on my friend's door and look back 2 seconds after, he disappeared. Nowhere to be found. Some people were walking by me and saw me talking, but they looked at me weird, and my friend said he was listening to me talking to myself outside his house, and I said if he saw the homeless guy, to which he replied, "No, I just saw you talking to yourself." To this day, it is still traumatizing and really scary. I do not know what it was, and since my family is religious, I was very afraid. I have had a long history with hauntings everywhere I go, happening to me, along with dreams of me being taken away from heaven by Satan but then being reached by God and saying it is not your time. Creepy. Redditor 120. I once lived in a loft-style warehouse in LA, with multiple people boarding in bunk beds. I had the top bunk in my room. I was going to sleep, and I took my glasses off. I don't move around a lot, so I normally just put them next to my pillow instead of climbing down to put them away. I accidentally dropped my glasses between the wall and the bunk bed. Sighing, I get out of bed and root around under the bottom bunk. There's nothing being stored under there but dust bunnies. Glasses aren't there. I turn the lights on, I look everywhere within 5 feet of the bed, and my glasses have just disappeared. Yes, I am partially blind, but I know for a fact there are no glasses there. The next morning I get out my old contacts and continue to grumble about the mystery. Fast forward 2 weeks later, for whatever reason I'm looking under the sofa that was also in my room but roughly 10 feet away and at a 90-degree angle from the bed, and my glasses are under the couch, in the far corner against the wall. Somehow when they got dropped they managed to slide 10 feet across the room and to an adjacent corner without making any noise other than first plop. Redditor 121. When I was in high school I had a dream that it was Christmas and I was at my grandparents' house. My grandpa was wearing a burgundy long-sleeved shirt, dark jeans and brown loafers. In my dream I knew it was my last Christmas with my grandpa. Fast forward a few months and I go to my grandparents' house. My grandpa is wearing a burgundy long-sleeved shirt, dark jeans and brown loafers. It was my last Christmas with him. Redditor 122. I was at a friend's house for the night and a really bad storm rolled in. We were hanging out in his room playing on the computer, and all of a sudden a blinding flash of white fills the entire room. The thunder to follow shook the room and all the power went out. We decided to go out and check to make sure everything was okay because we thought the house had been hit, but when we left his room, his brother and mom said they didn't hear or feel anything and the power never went out. It was odd because the digital clock was still flashing in his room from the power outage, but no other clocks or anything seemed affected. Neither of could explain it. Redditor 123. I remember a Swedish pop group called ABBA that apparently doesn't exist. Redditor 124. Once I was sitting on the couch, just watching TV, and heard the very unmistakable sound of the front door unlocking, the door opening, closing, and then getting locked again. But it was weird, it was too early for my mom to be home. So I waited, and never heard the sound of a purse being put down, so I checked, and nobody was there. Some similar issues occurred later, with the same sound of the door unlocking and opening, but many of those happened at night when we'd put the draft blocker in front of the door, so if an actual person had unlocked the door, there would have been evidence because the draft blocker would have been in a different place. And I swear it wasn't just sound weirdness in the apartment building, we could hear other people unlocking their doors, but that's always more muffled than it is when someone unlocked our own door, and you could never hear someone else's door opening in our apartment. So weird. Also, I don't know if this totally counts, but we've had so many boxes and random things go missing. It's like several boxes of our stuff just disappeared off of moving trucks while we were moving. We're always careful to make sure someone's watching the truck during loading unloading, so I don't think someone just walked off with my bin of Barbie dolls and not, say, the more valuable American Girl dolls, or the furniture, and it's not likely someone just broke into our apartment one day to steal like 5 boxes of decorations and toys and nothing else like, say, the jewelry. These boxes just disappeared without a trace. And I know it's stuff I didn't agree to sell at a garage sale and just don't remember. So, I don't know. Redditor 125, one time when I was a child my parents were driving at night. It was pretty late, we got back from a wedding we attended. I was staring out of the car window because I couldn't sleep. It was pretty late and the sky was very clear, so I was gazing at the stars when I noticed one moving. Within seconds I realized it was coming closer, toward us, and it wasn't a star, it was some kind of jet. So I panicked and told my little brother and parents that a plane was going to crash into us because it literally headed towards us. My parents didn't pay attention, but my little brother looked out the window on my side as well and he saw it too. We both were panicking now, and right when we thought we were going to die, it was just a few inches away from crashing into us. It suddenly pulled up, as if it was avoiding to hit us. Me and my brother were both just staring at each other in shock. We figured that it flew over us, past our car, and so we looked out at the other side, his window, to watch where it went, but it wasn't there. It was gone. Vanished. I still don't know what that was. But it terrified the shit out of me.